Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked away from a conversation thinking, why didn't I say that? Or maybe someone threw a rude comment your way, and it took every ounce of self-control not to snap. Confident people, they don't lose it. They don't yell, argue, or stoop down. They lead with calm. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how they do it, with 5 things they always remember. Confident people don't react impulsively when someone makes a rude comment. They respond with intention. That single difference changes everything. A reaction is fast, unfiltered, and usually driven by emotion. It's that instant urge to fire back, to defend yourself, to prove a point in the heat of the moment. But when you react like that, you're giving away your power. You're letting someone else control your mood, your behavior, even your energy. Confident people don't hand that control over to just anyone. They pause. They create space between the comment and their response. That space, that's where strength lives. In that space, they breathe. They ground themselves before they say a single word. They're not silent because they're shocked or scared. They're silent because they're calculating. They're deciding if the comment even deserves their energy. They're not interested in verbal battles, one-upping, or clever comebacks, because the goal isn't to win the argument. The goal is to keep their peace. Confidence is about emotional maturity. It's the ability to feel anger, annoyance, or disappointment and still choose your response with calm clarity. That kind of emotional discipline doesn't come from ego. It comes from self-respect. When a confident person hears a rude comment, they don't immediately assume it's true or take it personally. They filter it. They ask themselves, does this reflect who I am or who they are? That filter stops 1,000 arguments before they even begin. It's not about being passive or weak. It's about being strategic. A confident person knows that reacting out of anger might feel good in the moment, but it rarely solves anything. It usually escalates the situation, fuels drama, and creates regret. Responding, however, keeps the situation in your hands, and more importantly, it keeps your dignity intact. Sometimes that response might be a firm statement. Sometimes it's a calm question that flips the energy. What made you say that? Sometimes it's even just a simple look that says everything without a single word. But in all cases, the confident person is in control of how they show up. They don't need to raise their voice to be heard. They don't need to match the rudeness to make a point. Their tone stays even, their expression stays composed, and their words stay intentional. Because confidence is not loud, it's quiet strength. Even when the rude comment is designed to provoke, to get under their skin, to test them, they don't take the bait. That's not because they don't feel anything. They do, but they've learned to master the gap between stimulus and response. That's the true test of character. Not how you behave when everyone is kind to you, but how you carry yourself when someone's being disrespectful. In that moment, the confident person is not thinking, how do I shut them down? They're thinking, how do I stay aligned with who I am? And alignment matters more than ego. When you're reactive, you're not really yourself. You're a version of yourself on defense. But when you're responsive, you stay in your center. You protect your peace, your values, and your energy. That kind of response makes people stop. It makes them rethink their words because they expected a fight and instead they got stillness. That calm, collected response doesn't just handle the rude comment. It disarms it. It makes it powerless, because the moment you stop letting other people dictate your emotional state, you become unshakable. When a confident person hears a rude comment, their first instinct isn't to take it personally, it's to look deeper. They know that most rudeness is a reflection of the other person, not themselves. It's a projection. Insecurity dressed up as sarcasm, pain disguised as attitude, jealousy hidden in passive aggression. And confident people have trained themselves to see it for what it is. They've stopped expecting maturity from everyone they meet. They know that sometimes people lash out not because of who you are, but because of something unresolved in them. So instead of absorbing the insult, they observe the source. This doesn't mean they excuse disrespect. It means they refuse to carry what isn't theirs. If someone is short-tempered, dismissive, or harsh, a confident person doesn't immediately ask, what did I do wrong? They ask, what might be going on with them? That shift in perspective protects them from internalizing nonsense. It's not about letting people walk over you. It's about not letting them walk into your mind. A rude comment can ruin your day only if you believe it's about you. But the truth is, people speak from their own lens, and that lens is often clouded by stress, insecurity, or fear. Confidence gives you the power to separate what's said from what's real. Someone might roll their eyes, interrupt you, or make a subtle jab, but confident people know that behavior speaks volumes. It's not an evaluation of your worth. It's a spotlight on their character. That realization stops the spiral before it starts. There's no need to sit with it, replay it, or overanalyze. A confident person hears it, filters it, and moves on. They don't collect rude comments like evidence against themselves. They let them bounce off because they trust their own character more than someone else's bad day. It takes emotional maturity to remember that not everything said to you is for you. A lot of people speak from wounds. They speak from pressure. They speak from patterns they haven't outgrown. Confident people understand that, and they refuse to take ownership of someone else's emotional baggage. When someone makes a rude comment, it's not a mirror, it's a window. And the confident person looks through it, not into it. They see the emotional mess on the other side and choose not to bring it into their space. They know better than to take things personally that were never personal to begin with. This is why confident people can stay calm. They've developed the mental discipline to ask themselves, is this mine to carry? Most of the time, the answer is no. So they release it. They don't replay the conversation 100 times. They don't craft the perfect comeback in their head. They stay rooted in the truth that someone else's words do not define them. That ability to emotionally detach from rudeness is what keeps them steady. It's not that they're unaffected. It's that they know what to ignore and what to engage. Even when the comment cuts deep or comes from someone close, confident people still take a breath and examine the intent behind the words. Was it pain speaking? Was it a cry for attention? Was it an attempt to pull them into drama? That awareness doesn't make the words hurt less, but it gives the hurt context. And when you understand where something comes from, you're less likely to let it live rent-free in your mind. Confidence isn't the absence of emotion. It's the presence of clarity. That clarity becomes a shield. It allows confident people to walk through rude environments without absorbing negativity. It helps them stay focused on what matters rather than getting derailed by people who haven't done their own emotional work. They've learned that not every comment deserves their energy. Not every insult deserves an answer, and not every opinion deserves a place in their mental space. So they choose to disengage, not because they're weak, but because they're wise. Silence is a tool that confident people use with precision. When someone throws a rude comment their way, they don't always meet it with words. Sometimes they say absolutely nothing, and that silence speaks louder than any comeback ever could. It's a silence that holds weight, not because they're unsure of what to say, but because they've already decided that the comment doesn't deserve a reaction. In a world that expects noise, silence becomes power. It makes the rude person uncomfortable because they expected a spark and got stillness instead. And in that stillness, the rude person is forced to sit with their own words. Confident people know that not everything needs to be addressed. They don't feel the urge to defend themselves in every situation. They've built the self-awareness to recognize when someone is trying to bait them into conflict. And when they sense that bait, they step back. Not out of fear or avoidance, but because they value their energy too much to waste it on nonsense. Their silence isn't weakness. It's choice. It's the mature decision to protect their peace. They understand that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to not give someone the reaction they're looking for. In many situations, silence disarms more than words. A rude person expects you to snap, to argue, to fire back with just as much disrespect, but when you remain silent, composed, and unbothered, it throws them off balance. They don't know what to do with it. They've rehearsed the conflict in their mind, but they didn't prepare for grace. Silence shifts the energy in the room. It redirects attention away from the insult and toward the person who spoke it. Suddenly, they're exposed, and without your reaction to justify their behavior, they're left standing in the discomfort they created. Silence gives you space. It gives you a moment to breathe, to check in with yourself, to decide if the situation is even worth your time. Confident people use that pause to observe. They watch how others behave, how words are delivered, how energy shifts. They're not rushing to prove themselves. They're listening with intention, reading the room, measuring their next step. In that space, they remain grounded. They're not controlled by impulse. They're led by principle, and those principles tell them that not all battles are worth fighting. Silence becomes a filter that protects them from unnecessary chaos. This kind of control doesn't come from pretending to be calm. It comes from being deeply grounded in who you are. When you know your worth, you don't need to validate it every time someone questions it. Silence becomes a quiet declaration of self-respect. It says, without saying, that you're not moved by disrespect, that your presence doesn't shrink just because someone tried to challenge it, that you don't need to clap back to feel strong. You just need to stay in control of yourself. That's what confident people do. They stay in control even when the environment tries to pull them out of it. There's also a certain level of elegance in silence. It creates curiosity. It invites people to think. It gives space for reflection. When someone is met with silence after being rude, they're left to face their own words without distraction. And often that's where the lesson begins. Confident people understand that they don't need to do the teaching. Sometimes silence teaches for them. It holds up a mirror to the rude person and lets them see themselves clearly. That's the kind of confrontation that doesn't need volume or intensity. It needs composure and restraint. Silence is not passive, it's strategic. It's a deliberate act of strength that allows confident people to keep their dignity intact. They've learned that loud responses may win the moment, but silent ones often win the long game. They don't always speak, not because they don't have something to say, but because they've mastered the art of knowing when to speak and when to let their calm presence say everything that needs to be said. Confident people are not afraid to set boundaries, even in the face of rudeness. They understand that confidence isn't about letting things slide to appear calm. It's about protecting your space with grace and clarity. When someone crosses the line with a disrespectful comment, a confident person doesn't explode or retreat. They step forward with a steady tone and firm words, making it clear where the line is and that it will not be crossed again. They don't need to be aggressive to be assertive. Their boundary is set not with volume, but with conviction, and that makes it far more powerful. They have learned that boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about honoring themselves. When someone speaks to them in a way that lacks respect, they don't internalize it or brush it off for the sake of peace. Instead, they calmly call it out. They might say something simple and direct, but the message behind it is strong. I respect myself too much to let that slide. That level of clarity is often unexpected. People assume silence means permission, but confident people break that assumption without raising their voice. They don't argue, they state, and they do it with calm, measured energy. What makes their boundary setting so effective is the intention behind it. It's not about shaming or punishing the other person. It's about standing in alignment with who they are. When a rude comment is thrown their way, they don't mirror that rudeness. They don't let their emotions take the wheel. They stay anchored. They respond with statements that are simple but loaded with self-respect. They might say they didn't like the tone or that a comment was uncalled for, and then they leave it there. No over-explaining, no defending, just truth delivered with poise. Confident people also understand that setting boundaries is not a one-time event. It's a continuous practice. Every interaction is a chance to either reinforce your values or abandon them. When they consistently speak up in a respectful way, they train others on how to treat them. People begin to realize that disrespect will not go unnoticed. That energy shift starts to shape relationships. The people who respect boundaries stick around. The ones who thrive on disrespect often fall away. That's not rejection, it's refinement. And confident people welcome that process because they're not desperate to keep everyone comfortable. Even in tense situations, they keep their tone level. They use body language that's open but firm. They look the other person in the eye, not to intimidate, but to be seen. They don't raise their voice, but they don't lower their standards either. That balance between calm and directness is what makes their boundaries feel unshakable. People listen, not because they're scared, but because the message is undeniable. There's nothing confusing about it. The confident person isn't inviting a debate. They're drawing a line and doing so with composure that can't be ignored. There's a deep sense of self-awareness behind every boundary they set. They know what they stand for. They know what behavior crosses the line, and they're not afraid to protect their emotional, mental, and even physical space. That kind of awareness doesn't just show up in confrontations. It shapes their presence in every room they walk into. People sense that they are not easily shaken, that they won't tolerate disrespect, not because they're defensive, but because they're deeply grounded in their own value. That energy sets a tone without needing to raise a hand or a voice. Ultimately, their boundaries are less about walls and more about doors. They allow people in, but only if they come with respect. They don't shut people out of fear. They guide people in with clarity. They're not controlling others. They're controlling their environment, and they've learned that when you communicate your standards with calm strength, you don't push people away. You attract the ones who belong. That's the real beauty of setting boundaries with grace. It protects your peace while elevating the quality of every connection you keep. Confident people are anchored in a strong sense of identity, and that foundation is what keeps them steady when faced with rude comments. They don't crumble under criticism because they know who they are. Their self-worth isn't shaped by public opinion or fleeting emotions. It's built from values, character, and lived experience. So when someone tries to insult them, they don't feel the need to defend or explain themselves. They've already done the internal work. They're not walking through life seeking validation. Their calm response isn't something they perform. It's something they carry because their identity isn't on the table for negotiation. This inner rooting also shows up in the way they carry themselves. There's a quiet confidence in their tone, posture, and presence that tells the world they're not easily shaken. They don't need to overcompensate, brag, or defend every action. They're not performing strength. They're living it. And that presence can silence a rude comment better than any loud comeback. People feel that energy. It's not about intimidation. It's about clarity. When you're clear on who you are, the noise doesn't stick. It might echo for a moment, but it fades fast because there's no place for it to land. They've also learned that their identity isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. And in being real, they accept that not everyone will understand them, respect them, or like them. But they don't bend for approval. They stay upright in their own lane. That stability makes them magnetic because confidence isn't loud and it isn't arrogant. It's deeply grounded. It's that unshakable feeling that you don't need to match rudeness, you don't need to explain your worth, and you don't need to let someone's bad day alter how you see yourself. That's how confident people hold their peace and hold their power at the same time. So the next time a rude comment comes your way, pause. Don't react. Remind yourself of who you are and what you stand for. You don't need to match the energy, prove anything, or fight every battle. Confidence isn't loud, it's grounded. It's in the stillness, the silence, the calm boundary, and the unshakable identity. When you master that, you stop giving your power to people who never earned it. You don't lose your cool because you've already decided that your peace is worth more than someone else's moment of disrespect.